I clutched the cold, merciless steel in my hand as if my life depended on it. The pistol grip felt comfortable, even friendly, as if she was created for me. My finger hovered over the trigger, twitching dangerously. One click. That would be enough. One small push, and I could end my life. The feeling of divine power that filled me was overwhelming. It shouldn't be so easy to kill someone, but that's how it is. Tears streamed down my face as my heart seemed to be twisted in unnatural directions, taking on an unrecognizable shape. I had a hard time thinking clearly. I could only feel pain, anger, powerless hopelessness. They were like all the present beings hidden within me, almost alive. Kill her. Anger whispered in my ear, with a demonic voice dripping with evil. The pain, on the contrary, screamed loudly in agony. Hopelessness just wanted to give up and give up on life altogether. All three of them were forced to witness the same horrific show that I had the front seats to see. "Just pull the trigger," my dark passengers chanted. "Make us feel better." My mind tried to intervene. The good, decent person inside of me tried to bring me back. He told me that nothing would be the same after this. It will be impossible to return to the way things were before. My fate will be determined. I will officially become a murderer. What is he talking about? Everything has already changed. She ensured that, when she chose him over me, her choice brought the three of us here. It's her fault. She did it. Now shut up and let me do what she's supposed to do. The terrible day when she told me that our life together was over was a week ago. With a voice full of regret and a lump in her throat, she said she needed to leave. She needs to be with him, with her love. I would like to say that I took this news like a real man. I would like to say that I told her to go to hell and slammed the door behind her forever. But I didn't do any of this. Instead, I gave away all my pride, every bit of it. I laid it at her feet when I begged her not to leave. I fucking begged, sitting there, sobbing like a widow at a funeral, begging her to love me more than she loves him. We've been through so much. We had plans for the future. We were going to take our baby and move into that big house she loved so much. This was her dream home. She had imagined herself in such a house since childhood, and yet these plans were not enough for her to decide to stay with me. Our love was not strong enough to keep her from going to him again and again. It certainly wasn't enough to make her give him up. "I'm sorry you found out this way. I love you, I really do. But I can't give him up. I have to follow my heart." She cried, hugging me, begging to understand me. I felt the wetness on her cheeks as she pressed herself against me. Her ragged sighs danced on my neck with every sob. What did she want me to understand? Did she really expect me to make it easier for her? That I should have just given her my blessing to find happiness without me? Has she gone crazy? I gave her everything. All. I would have given more if she had asked. But this is something I would never give her. I would never give her my blessing to be with another man. How can any man put up with this? How can he just sit idly by while the woman he loves lies with another man? I'm gonna kill her. She must die. I aimed at her back. The iron sights protruding from the front of the pistol were positioned perfectly between 2 points on the back, just as I had practiced at the range. It was perfectly level, pointing directly at the spot on her spine that he wanted to destroy. Hitting the target, I could finish her at any moment and she wouldn't even know what hit her. The shoulder blades of her shoulders moved rhythmically as her shadow danced on the wall of the room in the candlelight. Her small, manicured hands were firmly planted on his chest to provide her with the force she needed as she sensually moved her hips from top to bottom. Even the softness of her silhouette was beautiful. How could a scene so beautiful and erotic be so disgusting? My mind mocked me with memories of running my hands along the curve of her back. I could practically feel her soft skin on my lips as I kissed her from her shoulder blades to the curve of her buttocks. The mirage of her eyes looking at me longingly as we made love was almost real enough to make my lips turn up into a smile. A slight groan filled the air, snapping me out of my thoughts. She threw her head back and sighed after moaning, as if preparing for the next one. Although I couldn't see her face, I knew exactly what it looked like. It was the expression of a beautiful woman on the verge of a peak. I've seen this so many times that I could probably close my eyes and paint a picture. Her trembling lips were parted, her eyes were squeezed shut, and her forehead was wrinkled in an intense expression. Her hips sped up as she chased that moment of sweet release. The two of them moved in harmony, each working in unison with the other. They completely surrendered to the moment. They were like passengers on a blissful journey. I remembered the days when we were in harmony the same way. Damn, that was just a week ago. That bastard's hands caressing her breasts made me feel nauseous to the point of almost vomiting. Hearing him moan in unison with her was another blow to the chest. I saw his eyes roam over her curves with greed and admiration as her serpentine movements used his body for her pleasure. The room was several degrees warmer than the rest of the house. It was as if their sex was burning at a temperature that defied the laws of physics. So was my anger. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't even know I was in the room. They didn't hear me enter the house, climb the stairs, and creak the door. Now they faced certain death and did not suspect it. They were lost in their sea of bliss. How could she be with him? How could she stop loving me so easily? No matter what she said, she couldn't love me and do this to me. No one who loves someone could have their heart broken so easily. Did she ever really love me? My heart was racing with anger and anticipation. I tried to prepare myself for the sudden pop that would follow after I pulled the trigger. I weakly tried to calm my nerves and stop my hands from shaking. Shooting at paper targets at the range is one thing, but this... Tears burned my eyes as my vision became blurry. Holding the gun steadily became more difficult with each passing minute. I wanted them dead so badly that I could taste their blood, but I couldn't overcome my inner voice. My demonic passengers tried to drown him out, but he was there, begging to be heard. It is not right. He was right. This was wrong. But standing there watching their consensual love was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It was as if they were dancing to their own music. His hands moved over her body as if they belonged there. At that moment, I realized how much he knew her. He knew her body. Every inch. He's been in it more times than I'd like to think. She was a Lear. Damn Lear. She told me that her body was only for me. I was the only one blessed with the privilege of enjoying her feminine form. She told me that she belonged to me. But the bastard lay there, enjoying the thought of making love to the woman who belonged to him. The bullets were begging me to release them from the chamber. They had a burning desire to do what they were created to do. They had to fulfill their purpose. They were hungry. They had an insatiable desire for blood. His blood. Her blood. They would even take mine if I was ready. I felt my finger tighten on the trigger. I blinked to clear the moisture from my eyes. My aim was firmly placed on her back again. I saw my goal clearly again. I knew exactly where the bullet would go and how much damage it would do to her. It won't kill her right away. She still has a few moments of breathing left. That would be enough for her to see him join her on her journey to hell. Die, bitch. Die in agony. Right before I released hell and torment, I saw our son. He wasn't physically in the room. It was more of a flash of memory in my head. I saw his face, similar to mine, his smile, his hair. Bobby Jr. was my carbon copy. My finger loosened its grip as his eyes penetrated my soul. How could I do this to him? This act of revenge will not end with the bloodshed of the traitor in the arms of her lover. This will only be the beginning for Bobby. My revenge will be at his expense. Crap. I wasn't the most attentive father. I wasn't there for him like a father should have been. I was practically a stranger to him. However, I loved him. In my own way, I loved him. Did I love him enough to let his mother leave with my heart set on fire? Did I love him enough to let the past go for his own good? Yes. I loved it. At this thought, the gun began to lower. It was no longer aimed at her back. I died a little more inside, letting my chance for justice slip away. I needed it. I really needed this. But he needed her more than I needed retribution. With my decision made, I began to slowly retreat from the room. I quietly, easily took each step as I began to leave. In the background, The two fools continued to make love, completely unaware of how close they had come to their end. I was almost out, almost free from revenge. My soul remained intact. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. Just as I decided to do the decent thing, I heard it. A soul-rending sound that was so terrible, so wrong, that it almost killed me. "I love you, baby." Her gentle voice was barely audible, but the words were deafening. Those 4 words instantly consumed me, filling me with such agony that it almost paralyzed me. She spoke the same words to me, in the same voice, trembling with pleasure, but they were full of love and tenderness. She loved him. Did she love him? Instantly, I found myself overboard and drowning in a sea of pain, hopelessness, despair, and white-hot anger. I couldn't swim, couldn't breathe. The water was too rough, the waves were too strong. The more I struggled, the more my lungs burned and filled. Finally, I gave up. I wasn't strong enough to fight it. Fate has won. They are finished. I will end their world forever. But not like that. Not with this gun. I will not give them a world of quiet death. I wanted them to suffer as much as I suffered. I wanted them to feel the loss I felt. They won't feel it if they die. One of their last memories will be the sweet love they shared. This shouldn't happen. I wanted something different. I wanted to tear them out of each other's arms, screaming and struggling. I wanted to tarnish everything about their love. I wanted to take everything they valued and strangle them with it. I left them in love. I'll give them a break just for tonight. Just for this night. I hope they enjoyed it. This will be my last gift to them. The pen is mightier than the sword. Edward Bulwer Lytton. I'm going to kill them 1,000 times with a weapon more powerful than my 9mm Beretta. I will make them wake up every morning and regret their existence using a simple device. Feather. 30 minutes later, I walked into my empty apartment with a sinister smile on my face. The sadness and pain I felt was hidden by my insatiable desire to see them suffer. I wanted to see her face, contorted by such deep loss that it matched what I saw in the mirror when I thought of her. I sat down at my desk and took out a pen and notepad. Then I started writing. The words came out of me like vomit. My pain was ripped out and scattered across the paper. It took 5 drafts until I read what I wrote and was happy with it. Then I sealed their fate in an envelope, added a stamp, and went to the nearest mailbox to drop it there. I could have just left it as outgoing mail in my mailbox, but I needed to make that walk and drop it in the mailbox to make sure I couldn't change my mind. As soon as I dropped the letter in the mailbox, I was overcome with a lonely feeling of rejection, as well as anger at the betrayal. As I walked home, my shoulders sagged under the weight of the world. Damn it! I hated her to the core. I hated her. I still loved her. My pride didn't want to admit it, but it was true. I will love her for a while longer. However, there was still a small spark of hope within me. I knew life would go on one way or another. No matter what happens to Rachel, days will turn into weeks, which will turn into months and years. One day, all today's events will disappear into the oblivion of history. They will turn into a sad story of my past. The events of tomorrow will eclipse the events of today. As I approached the threshold of my house, I chuckled to myself at one last thought. In about 3 days, I will change her life in such a way that she will never forget me. No matter how much time passes, she will never be able to dismiss me as a historical detail in the story of her life. I'll be the bastard who changed her future. Letter, dear Robert Hamsley. Sherry, my name is Jonathan. You don't know me, so don't bother trying to remember my face. We met once about 3 years ago, but I doubt you remember me. It was at a Christmas party that the company throws every year. You were so engrossed in your conversation with Rachel that you barely noticed me. The way you looked at her and danced with her made it seem like there was no one else in the room. No matter how many times she confessed her love to me, it couldn't compare to the way she looked at you that night. Then I realized it. I realized that she loves you more than me. This was the first time I even became aware of your existence. She had never mentioned you at work before. She didn't even wear a wedding ring. As soon as she entered the building, you did not exist for her. I shouldn't have been at that party. She tried to come up with any excuses to leave me at home, but I insisted. I wanted to be with her that night, so I ignored her weak excuses and came anyway. Boy, what a surprise awaited me. I had to kick the hell out of her and run away as quickly as possible, but I couldn't. I refused to believe it, even though my head was telling me the truth. Instead, I believed her lies when she said that she didn't care about you and that I was the only love of her life. I believed them because my heart wanted to believe. Although I know you, you don't know me. However, you know the woman I love. You know her well. You know her because you are married to her. We dated for 4 years. Yes, we've been together for a little over a third of your marriage. Perhaps you think this is a mistake. Perhaps this letter was addressed to another unhappy husband. Or maybe I'm confusing your Rachel with another woman with the same name. That last ray of hope that you're desperately trying to cling to makes it impossible for you to believe that your wife could do this to you. At this stage, I could prove this to you by describing the private parts of her body. You know, the parts that a man wouldn't know about unless he saw her in the ecstasy of passion. I really could do this, but I don't need to. I have proof that is much more convincing. My son. All you have to do is test Bobby Jr. What do I mean? What I'm saying is that your son is not your son. He is my son. I am his biological father. He may have your last name, but he has my blood. Don't believe me? Well, it's good that we live in a world where there are opportunities to find out the truth. All it takes is a swab of his cheek. But I'll save you time. Enclosed with this letter is a copy of the DNA test your wife took a couple of years ago. She doesn't know I have a copy. She destroyed the original. However, when she was sleeping in my bed after showing it to me, I made a copy. Perhaps I subconsciously knew that this was what awaited the three of us. This evening, I was at your house. I watched you two having sex in your bed. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. I kept remembering how Rachel and I made love on that very bed. Every time you left town, I was there. You looked so satisfied. You were sure that she belonged only to you. Do you want to hear something funny? Probably not, but I'll tell you anyway. I was this confident just a little over a week ago in the same bed. The same words she spoke to you. She spoke to me many times. You're probably wondering how I got into your house without being noticed, and why I was there in the first place. Well, how? It's simple. I know where you keep your spare key. I've used it on numerous occasions to quietly enter your home without the neighbors noticing. On those warm nights, I walked up your steps and into your bedroom. Rachel was always there, in your bed, waiting for me. I remained unnoticed because I know your living room so well that I could walk around there blindfolded and not bump into anything. I could walk up the stairs quietly because I know which steps squeak. Rachel always insisted on not waking our son, so she always made me tiptoe around. Why was I there tonight? The answer to this is a little more complicated. There's no point in beating around the bush, so I'll just say it. I was there in your house to kill you both. Do you want to know what stopped me? My son. I knew that killing you would change his life forever. I couldn't do this to him. He doesn't deserve this. I wish I could tell you that I'm sorry about all of this, but I'm not. You need to know what kind of woman she is. The love you share with her is not exclusively yours. She is not exclusively yours. Before she decided to end our relationship, she was trying to figure out how to leave you. We were going to create our own lives together. I don't know why she suddenly changed her mind and decided to try to improve her relationship with you. You probably won in this aspect. But did you really win? Does knowing she loves you make you any less special? Does it hurt to know that she can give away this love so easily? Since it is no longer rare, does this love become less valuable? Does this make you sad? I hope so. I hope the pain you feel makes you smarter than I was. I hope you will do what I should have done when I realized that her tender words of love were nothing more than a lie. If you're worried about looking around, don't be. I will end this letter with a promise. You have nothing to worry about with me. I won't try to finish what I started. I will never bother you again. You can call the police and arrest me for breaking and entering if you want. but I bet you won't. I bet you will realize that your problem is not with me, just as I realized that mine is not with you. Wouldn't you like to think of me as the person who opened your eyes? I will never bother you again, because you both are now in my past. I need to let her go and heal. I can handle the pain of losing her. Eventually I'll move on and she'll just become a bullet that I dodged. What I can't stand is the pain that comes with constantly hating her. She's not worth it. Not worth it anymore. If you want my advice, get rid of her. The loss you will feel when you do this will be nothing compared to what you will go through if you always doubt. Every day you will ask yourself, is this the day she will leave for another man? Trust me, when I tell you, watching her walk out of your life is enough to make a man do the unthinkable. Take this advice for what it's worth. Yours sincerely, Jonathan. 3 years later. I checked my watch for the umpteenth time and glared at the acne-ridden teenager who couldn't make a simple sandwich. How long might this take? If I had known he would be so slow, I would have gone and done it myself. My mood was already ruined. It's been 2.5 years since I was last here. There are many bad memories associated with this place. My plans were simple. Sign this contract that work sent me to and get out of here. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to leave without facing the ghosts of my past. John? I've never had any luck. I heard my name whispered in surprise as I stood in line for lunch. A soft, melancholic voice came from behind me. I didn't need to turn around to recognize its owner. I remembered it. Hearing her say my name used to make my heart race. But not anymore. I turned around to face the beauty of my past, Rachel. My eyes met hers again, as they had done so many times before. A strange feeling of déjà vu came over me. This is where we went on our first date many years ago. It wasn't exactly a date. It was more like lunch with a colleague. At least that's what we told ourselves then. However, the undeniable physical attraction between us, as well as the growing sexual tension due to flirting with suggestive jokes, made our lunch anything but innocent. At that time, I knew nothing about her husband. For me, she was a free woman. But honestly, I wouldn't care if I found out. As soon as I looked into her eyes and heard her chesty laugh, I was lost. I fell under her spell, under her song, and ultimately met my doom. Yes, I felt nostalgic for the erotic memories I shared with Rachel, but there were other memories that followed them. Broken heart, loneliness, madness. Rachel gave me a small smile and waved her fingers as she greeted me. I thought it was you, she said, looking me up and down. Hey, Rach, I said, involuntarily doing the same with her. Old habits. She was still a beauty. I couldn't help but admit it. I didn't expect to meet you here. I was pleasantly surprised at how calm I felt. My voice was smooth and filled with sincere warmth. I didn't have to pretend anything. There was a time when the mere mention of her name, even if it belonged to another woman, would drive me crazy. But here, I stood in front of the object of my fall and felt completely in control of myself. Same here. You disappeared like you fell off the face of the earth when you left. Her eyes looked away for a moment and slid down. Something like melancholy flashed across her face, but it was instantaneous. I nodded in recognition. Yeah, well, I needed to get away. I needed a change of scenery. You know, I needed space. She nodded grimly at what was left unsaid. Yeah, I think we both needed it. A moment of awkward silence followed. She looked like she was about to say something else, but I heard my number called. I had to look away from the conversation to confirm to the waiter that the food was mine. Once I made eye contact to let him know the order was mine, I quickly returned my attention to Rachel. Well, that's my order. It was nice seeing you, Rach. She gave me a thin smile and exhaled a little too loudly. She didn't seem to finish the conversation and was a little annoyed that we had been interrupted. But all she said was, "Have a nice day to you too, John." With that, I turned to get my food. I was ready to leave, but as I passed Rachel on the way out the door, she lightly grabbed my arm to stop me. Hey, John, are you in a hurry? I was hoping that maybe we could, talk. There's a lot left unsaid between us. I wanted to refuse her. Walking down memory lane didn't feel like a walk in the park. But deep down, I knew she was right. It was necessary to clarify the situation a little. Of course, I don't have to come back right away. I'll take a table over there and wait for you, I said, pointing to an empty table in the corner of the restaurant. She tilted her head back and looked over her shoulder to see where I was pointing. Her hair fluttered from the sudden movement of her head. If cameras had been trained on her, this moment could have been slowed down and turned into a $1 million shampoo commercial. Okay, I'll grab my food and join you, she said with a smile. I settled down at my table and began laying out the contents of my lunch. I was a little irritated because I had a takeout bag and not a tray for eating here, but using my bag as a handy plate wasn't too bad. After about 5 minutes, Rachel sat down across from me. At first, we both ate tea in silence. It was her meeting, so I assumed she would start the conversation. Although I had some pressing questions that had been plowing me for the past few years, I couldn't find the words to ask them. I was hoping she would start talking and somehow lead me to what I needed to know. She seemed to have the same hopes, so we both sat in awkward, tense silence. Chewing. Neither of us attempted to make eye contact with the other. From the corner of my eye, I saw her looking at the far wall. I did the same. Finally, she quietly asked, "Why did you do this to me, John? Why did you ruin my life?" I looked at her and saw that her eyes were filled with tears. Gun or letter? Both. Mostly the letter. Believe it or not, I understand the pistol. But you don't understand the letter? Seriously? She sniffled and wiped her eyes. No, not really. I can understand why you wanted to kill me, although I would never believe that you could do it. You are too good a guy, but I would never expect that you would go so far as to intentionally hurt me. You tried to ruin my life with that letter. The way it was written was as if you had deliberately chosen the words that would cause maximum damage. I thought that was not who you were. I couldn't understand how I felt hearing her say that. Mostly, I was annoyed. She broke my heart as easily as a child breaks fragile china, and here she is judging me for what I did in return, and he doesn't judge her for trying to kill her. This she understood. She was hurt that I told the truth about her. Despite my righteous indignation, I felt something else. Believe it or not, I also felt guilty. Not guilt for what I did to her, but for why I did it. After I got through the pain, I was able to look at my time with Rachel from a different perspective. All the memories I shared with her, all the declarations of love, they did not belong to me. They were his. I felt bad because I didn't do what I did because it was the right thing. I was not noble. I did it as a spontaneous act of revenge due to a broken heart. She was right. I wasn't like that. I was always taught to do the right thing. My father taught me better than this. But all the time I spent with her after I found out she was married, I was a person I didn't recognize. But I'll be damned if she's the one who judges me. You thought I wasn't like that? Seriously? No, you thought I'd just disappear and keep your dirty little secret. I'm not the one who cheated on your husband, Rachel. It was you. I didn't know him. I don't know him. Loved. But you did. You made vows to him and then broke them with me. Now you want to blame the end of your marriage on me because I told him what you did to him? I call bullshit on that. If you want to blame someone, then in the destruction of your marriage, look in the mirror. Her head snapped towards me, our eyes finally meeting. I saw small sparks of anger in her eyes, but they quickly went out. She couldn't argue with the truth. She knew I was right. After a moment, she looked away again, this time down to her food. You're right, she admitted reluctantly. Another moment of awkward silence threatened to consume us, so I decided it was my turn to bring up the question that had been secretly nagging at me even after all these years. Why didn't you choose me? If your marriage was as bad and loveless as you claimed, why did you stay in it? After all the times you told me you loved me and all the plans we made, you're still with him anyway. Why? She chewed on her French fries to avoid answering right away. I waited for her until she spoke again. It was her turn to continue. I wasn't going to help her out by speaking first. I loved you, John. I did. I wanted to leave him and go with you. When I was with you, it seemed like the whole world stopped moving. Nothing else mattered. When I was without you, I dreamed of ways to see each other with you again. But, I asked, when she paused a little longer than she should have. I was afraid that she was losing energy. But I loved him too. I'm sorry. I really did. I know I told you that we had problems in our marriage, and there was for a while. Her eyes took on a distant look before she continued. We were very young when we met. In fact, I had just turned 20 a couple of months ago. It was all about sex back then. We couldn't keep our hands off each other. After just 6 months of dating, we got married. We didn't even have a real wedding. At that moment, it didn't matter. The only thing we cared about was making promises to each other for eternity. The first few years were great. We had sex at every opportunity and in every nook and corner. We couldn't stay without each other for more than a few hours when we were separated. We even showered together every morning before work. Then things started to change between us. Our work began to take more time. Bills had to be paid. We began to spend less time together because we were constantly working. When he got the promotion, we thought it was the answer to our prayers. But that was not the case. It actually widened the gap between us. He became even more absent from home due to his new responsibilities. Plus, I still had to work because even with his salary increase, it wasn't enough. It seemed that when I was at home, he was not there, and vice versa. Back then, when we were home together, all we wanted to do was sleep and relax. That's when you met me, I interrupted, putting together the pieces of the puzzle. She nodded. Yes. When I met you, I forgot what it was like to be desired and in love. Men have always noticed me, but with you, there was something different. You made me feel it, like him when we first started dating. It opened up a world that I had closed inside myself. Flirting, sexy jokes, it all made me feel wanted. When I tried to rekindle the sex life between Rob and me, he became irritated, so I stopped trying. With him, of course. She looked at me and met my gaze. I nodded, acknowledging her statement. So I guess I was just supposed to be a casual hookup at work, right? This time she nodded. At first, yes. You were actually supposed to be a one-time thing. What changed? She looked at me with a sly smile and said, You were so good at it that I couldn't stop. I couldn't help but laugh at this. Thanks for the compliment. It wasn't a compliment. I was just telling you why I kept dating you. Okay, so you wanted a short office romance, but I turned out to be so good in bed that you couldn't stop. There's no reason to be complacent. Please continue, I said with a playful smile as I sipped my drink. Okay, she said, giving me a playful look and throwing a napkin at me. I continued to see you. The more I saw you, the closer I became to you. I gradually drifted away from loving my husband. This cheerful exchange between us was reminiscent of a time long past. But this conversation should not have revived those feelings. He was needed to get the answers we both needed. Why didn't you just divorce him? I asked, bringing us back. The playfulness disappeared with this question, and the conversation became serious again. Her face took on a gloomy expression. Honestly, I don't know. I definitely planned it. I even talked to divorce lawyers. I told myself I would do it eventually. All I needed was the right moment. But you never did, although you always told me you would. I paused and lowered my elbows onto the table, clasping my hands together at the top and forming a triangle. Then I dropped my chin onto my fists. Exhaling, I continued. You know what I think? I think there was never a right time because you were never really going to do it. Am I right? She wiped a tear from her eye and nodded. Yes. I pursed my lips in displeasure and refrained from saying something empty. I raised my head, took a deep breath, and chose my next words carefully. You're going to have to help me here, Rach, because I make you sound like a heartless bitch. Fine. Apparently, I didn't choose my words carefully enough. However, my answer was honest. She looked at me with surprised and hurt eyes. I quickly continued. You want me to believe that you are not the monster I think you are. But the facts say otherwise. You were married, and you made me believe that you were free. When I found out that you were married, You made me believe that your marriage is in danger, even though you just admitted that you never really intended to end it. Originally, I was just supposed to be a temporary lover, and you dated me, talked about a future with me, and even our baby. We even looked for houses together, damn it. You even chose one that was exactly like what you dreamed of when you were a child. But after all of this, you sit here and tell me that it was just a fantasy for you. I was a distraction to keep you happy while you waited for your marriage to get better again. It sounds so ominous when you say it like that, she said, still hurt from my attack. I snorted with a cynical laugh. Yeah, right? You should have told me that you're just playing games to spice up your life. Then maybe I wouldn't have gotten into this seriously. She took a moment to collect her thoughts before answering. I wasn't trying to play with you, John. Things were moving faster than I thought, and I was starting to get confused. But you can't honestly sit here and play the innocent victim. Yes, I didn't tell you I was married, but you found out about this at the Christmas party. Did you leave? No, you stayed. You knowingly entered into a relationship with a married woman for years. You didn't care about my husband. In fact, you wanted me to leave him and put you in his place. Your sacred desire for truth and justice only appeared after I didn't choose you. I may be a cheater, but guess what? So are you. At least I admit it after all these years. So please come down from your high horses and stop judging me as if you were some unwitting victim. We fell silent for a moment as if we both needed a break. I didn't want to admit it, but there was a lot of truth in her words. I really contributed to all of this. Of course, most of the blame lies with her, but I also made a significant contribution to what happened after. The only real victim in all of this was Rob. However, she was crazy if she thought I was as guilty as she was. Whatever happens, you still lied to me. Not only about you being married, but also about how little your marriage meant to you. You kept telling me that everything was bad between you, but I saw how he looked at you that night, the way you looked at each other. There was real love there. You misled me because you knew that if you had told me the truth, I wouldn't have fallen in love with you. That's what you think? Do you think I started this whole thing to make you fall in love with me, only to then leave you at the last moment? Come on, John. She adjusted herself in her seat and crossed her arms. We sat in silence, listening to my watch counting the seconds. All around us, people were talking and having fun, as if we did not exist. Funny how life works. No matter how much trouble your world is filled with, everything else moves without hesitation. Listen, John, she started again, breaking the silence. When you were supposed to be temporary, I didn't tell you about Rob because I didn't think it mattered. The plan was to meet, get some relief from the stress, and then leave with good memories. I always thought my marriage was okay. We'll work out eventually. I figured we'd both win. I get a break from a distant marriage, and you get free sex with no strings attached. What I didn't expect was for you to be so sweet and funny. I didn't expect the sex with you would be the way he was. You made me feel beautiful. I should have stopped it after that time. You were a problem for me, but I didn't. After some time, I started feeling very attracted to you. When it happened, it became harder to tell you. Then the Christmas party happened. Yes, Christmas party, I said bitterly, remembering that night. Finding out that the woman I fell in love with was actually married to someone else was a gut punch to no end. She shrugged. You say Rob and I looked so in love that night. That's what we looked like to everyone. Everyone thought we had the perfect marriage. We were good at it, pretending everything was fine. But you chose him in the end, so it couldn't be completely fake. She gave a nostalgic smile before speaking further. Something happened between us. I couldn't say exactly when or what it was, but something clicked. Perhaps it was on his part. Or perhaps I was just emitting a different aura. I don't know. All that, I know it's that we started getting along again. It was like we'd been in this thick fog for so long that we forgot about the sunshine. Then suddenly everything cleared up and we finally saw each other. I snorted and shook my head. Then I smiled bitterly and said, You just needed to get rid of that annoying affair. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. You may have started out like this, but you've become so much more. You may be angry at me for a lot of things. God knows you have a choice. But I can't let you think that the decision to let you go was made lightly. It was one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make. I pulled my hand out of hers. Who cares how hard it was for her to break my heart? It didn't make him any less broken. In fact, it sounded rather selfish. Is she a victim now? What about our son? I said, changing the subject. I finished listening to how she didn't want to hurt me. It was time to move on to another topic that was bothering me. Bob, what's wrong with him? Does he know about me? Her eyes were full of tears again. No, he's only 6. He's too young to understand. Luckily, he was young enough that he didn't fully understand what was going on between his dad and me. All he knows is that Dad doesn't live with us anymore, but he still spends a lot of time with him. He gets double gifts for Christmas and birthdays, and his dad comes and takes him out for ice cream. If I ever tell him about you, it will be years later. She wiped her eyes, then thought about something. She looked at me with narrowed eyes and asked, "Why are you asking about him?" Just curious, I guess. You know, I've always wanted a son. I told you so. Now I have a son, and I haven't been around for any part of his life. It's just hard for me, that's all. She continued to look at me suspiciously. You're not going to make a fuss about Bobby, are you? If you are, then don't do it. She said this in a voice that was both a warning and a threat. Listen, Rach, I'm not trying to ruin everything for you. I really don't. But you have to understand what I'm going through. I have a son who knows nothing about me. You're forgetting that I wanted to take you away and build you up with life with you. When you told me you were pregnant and that it was probably my baby, I dreamed of a future with you and Bobby. You took that dream away from me. She looked at me in disbelief, and then her face turned to anger. What am I going through? I need to understand what you're going through. You disappeared for 3 years without even trying to call to see if Bobby was okay. I haven't seen any child support check from you, and you haven't even tried to start doing it. So don't you dare sit here and try to claim it as if you were left out. The reason I didn't was because I was your dark little secret for 4 years. I couldn't be around my son because if I was, you'd have to tell your husband who his real father is. Okay, I understand that. What's your excuse for the last 3 years? She challenged me. After you ruined my life and told Rob everything, why didn't you try to be there for your son? I needed to get away from you. If I had stayed, I would have done something crazy. I left for the safety of us all. She leaned back in her chair and glared at me. So you left your son, the son you always wanted, because you couldn't control yourself around your mother? Don't put it on me. You broke my heart. She leaned forward and gave me a challenging look. I'm not putting anything on you, John. I'm making a point. Yes, I broke your heart. I'm a terrible person to be in a relationship with. But you know who else's heart was broken? Roberta. I broke it worse. But guess what? Him stayed for Bobby. He may not have wanted to be married to me anymore, but he loved his son enough to find a way to be in his life. He is Bobby's father and has been for all 6 years. He is the one who is on the record about the birth. He is the one who took care of him for the last 3 years. Even though he knows that Bobby is not his biological son. He takes Bobby from the babysitter when I can't, and he takes him every weekend to his house. He even made sure that I have all of Bobby's favorite foods at home when I don't have the money for it. Would you do that? My only answer was silence. It didn't matter anyway. She didn't expect a deep answer anyway. She continued, Robert has earned the right to be Bobby's father, not you. I'm not going to ruin this for any of them. I've already done enough. So, I'm sorry that you feel like you got less than you deserved, but that's the reality. I think about what's best for Bobby, and that's not you. As much as I didn't want to admit it, she was absolutely right. I felt a twinge of jealousy at the thought that her ex-husband was a better father than me, but I couldn't argue with the facts. I had no place in the child's life, at least not under such conditions. I wasn't the best option for Bobby because ultimately, I wouldn't be able to be there for him the way the man who raised him was. I wouldn't be a constant presence in his life. I built a life in another city. I wanted a family, but I wanted the whole thing. I wanted a wife and children, Selfish? Maybe. But not as selfish as if I ruined what Bobby had with Robert Sr. because I had some technical right to paternity. He had a father here who honorably took over the duties. He chose Bobby, despite all the troubles associated with it. "You're right," I said, nodding in agreement. She visibly relaxed and took a deep breath, as if she had been holding her breath for a long time. "I just have one last question, Rach. If you could start over, would you do anything differently? Would you choose me?" She thought for a minute, and then looked at me with an incomprehensible expression. I couldn't figure out what it was, but it seemed like she was trying to find the best words to express what she wanted to say. "Yes, I would do things differently, but not the way you think." She paused and gave me that look again. This time, I understood its meaning. She tried not to hurt my feelings. "If I could start over, I wouldn't have gotten involved with you in the first place. I fell in love with you, and it stopped me from working on my marriage. No matter how much I loved you, I always loved him more. I didn't understand. Before it was too late because I wasn't honest with you or myself. I had the love of two wonderful men, and I lost them both because I didn't listen to my heart in the first place. Even though I had already gotten over the pain of the past, it still hurt to hear that our time together was a mistake in her eyes. I agreed with her, but it still felt like another refusal. However, it was exactly what I needed to hear. I also believed that this was what she needed to tell me. She needed to say the words out loud for them to have power. They had probably been swirling around in her head ever since her husband received the letter. Saying them out loud and hearing them spoken gave us both a sense of closure. We could both close this chapter of our lives and put it away forever. Our lunch ended soon after. There was nothing more to say. As we left the restaurant, we said goodbye. We even hugged each other one last time, goodbye. Then she went left and I went right. Every step we took us further and further away from each other until we were completely out of each other's lives. Neither of us turned to look at the other's retreating figure. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.